Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, so let's get started. We're going to call the meeting to order on Thursday, June 3rd at about 12:10. A meeting of the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Val, let's look at the agenda here. Let's go ahead and call roll, or I'll leave that to the chairman to go ahead and go through the agenda. My bad.
No, you can go through the roll call. Could you guys help us out with that?
Okay, roll call.
Elia Guevara,
Present.
Myra Hernandez,
Present.
Cesar Garay, John Villarreal,
Present.
Arturo Dominguez,
Present.
Ray Rocha,
Present.
Rafael Dueñas,
Here.
George Alba,
Mr. Alville? Mr. Alville?
Not here
no,
yet.
it was, I think it was the computer that was on. Julian Roloski,
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum, Mr. Chairman, and we have Mr. Alkilt, who is not here. Everyone else is present, whether they're here in person or virtually. And if you allow me just for 1 minute, just to add to this on the row issue. So the next meeting is an in-person meeting, and at that point, I'd rather have everyone here in person to kind of go through the particulars, the new, some of the new rules that were set up by the city management, direction from the city council on all advisory committees. I can go through that the next time. But essentially, things remain the same, except you have to be in person. There's only 4 absences allowed per term for term year, from when you're appointed. Every year through that, you have 4 absences that are allowed. But otherwise, we can get into that the next meeting, Mr. Chairman.
We'll go ahead and continue on with the agenda. Action item 5A, discussion and possible action regarding a Chapter 380 agreement with Empacadora GAB. Mr. Garcia, the floor is yours.
1 second, if we can go back to minutes, you want to approve those?
I'm sorry, totally jumped out. We have the approval of minutes for May 2021.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mayra. Discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Garcia.
On the minutes, the committee has asked me to forward those to the city council in their Friday reports so they can see what you all are doing. We did not do that this past week because we had to ask for direction from our legal team whether we could send those minutes to the council without them being approved by you first. And usually that takes another whole month. So what they told us is that they came back and said, you can send the minutes to the council on a preliminary basis, and the committee can still come back and okay them formally the next month. So that's what we'll do moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. We'll wait for the call. All those in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Aye.
None against. Motion carries unanimously. Do we have any citizen comments, Mr. Garcia? None. Val?
no, we did not, as of right now, before meeting, the office, we don't have anything, if we do have anything, I will go ahead and advise.
Thank you, Val. Now we'll move into action item 5A, discussion and possible action regarding a Chapter 380 agreement with Empacadora GAB. Go ahead, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you very much. I'd like to point to you, and please tell me those who are on virtually, whether you can see the screen or not, which is the PowerPoint. And we can get that up on the screen here. You can? Okay, great. Oh, cannot? Okay, so we have to work on that. Hold on 1 second. We'll get some help to do that. Oh, yeah, my bad. He did tell me about that earlier, and I forgot. Okay, so,
For this.
Yeah, it's.
you can?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, good. How about in virtual land? Can you see it now?
No, we still can't. Is it on the WebEx?
It is supposed to be on the WebEx, yes.
They also have it available, right? I think you emailed it to them.
Yes, yes.
If they have it
We did,
available.
I did email it to you in a PDF to everyone, if you can't.
If you say next slide, Mission Public.
Okay, good. So right now, I'm at slide one, which is the intro page. So everyone can see that's Empacadora GAB, and has a picture or a rendering of what their facility will look like here in the next couple of months. Next slide. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll start going through this. We're gonna talk about the company. We're gonna talk about the economic strategy. We're gonna talk about the project proposal, fiscal and economic impacts, and then we're gonna summarize this particular proposal. Next slide. That's a photo about just 3 weeks old from the facility that Empacadora is building out on North Mines Road in the Pinnacle Center. So from here, committee members, I'm going to go through this project in more detail. The company is GAB Land Holdings. That's the formal name of it. They are also known as Empacadora GAB. This produce distribution firm was founded in 1990 in Laredo. It's located on North I-35 near the 69-35 interchange. They also have a Valley location, and of course, they're associated with the Mr. Lucky Group out of Mexico. GAB imports is a variety of vegetables and fruits from Mexico. They have fresh and frozen facilities. They have 13 personnel in an 18,000 square foot facility on North I-35. The new facility will just about triple the building in size. Next slide. So as part of our economic strategy, and some of you have been here since we've been developing this, we've been tasked in the Economic Development Department, and especially myself, in retaining jobs and creating investment, or creating jobs and creating investment opportunities. In this case, with Empacadora GAB, we are retaining the company and the jobs. This was a competitive situation where they needed to decide whether they were going to expand on their McAllen area facilities, or they were going to stay here in Laredo and expand in Laredo. So I think providing the economic incentive helped make their decision to remain here in Laredo. What they're bringing is a $10 million, well, really an $11.4 million investment, and you'll see why it's more than the $10 million here, but the $10 million is the building. So they're bringing a $10 million investment and new jobs to Laredo. This is part of the Viva Laredo comprehensive plan that the city adopted about 4 or 5 years ago now, that asks or points to retaining and expanding what we do best, and that is our logistics sector. And that's what we're doing here. What the city council directed us to do last year was to focus more on cold storage and produce, and this fits that bill. Produce and cold storage facilities and investment are nearly twice expensive as dry dock when it comes to luring an expansion or an investment. So if you're going to have a $5 million warehouse be put up as a dry dock, if it's going to be temperature controlled, it'll likely be closer to $10 million. And usually the jobs pay a little more. So we've been focusing on that industry, and we've been somewhat successful here in the last 18 months in recruiting several of those industries to Laredo, or local expansions like this one. The economic incentive is part of the Texas Chapter 380 program, which is a statewide program that allows cities and counties to offer economic incentives, usually through the way of property tax rebates and other programs to lure companies from other states or within Texas to your city. And in this case, retaining a company. This is a performance agreement. Again, the company has to produce the investment that they say they're going to produce, and also live up to the amount of jobs that they say they're going to create. And so if they don't, obviously the agreement can be terminated. But we try not to go there. We try to work with these companies. We want them to stay in Laredo. We want to be business friendly, but there has to be a bottom line to these agreements, and they have to perform. Like I mentioned earlier, this was competitive with McAllen, and we were able to keep this company here. Next slide. Pardon me one second. So the project proposal, again, it's a Texas Chapter 380 economic incentive. I'm going to go through the details of it here in the next couple of slides. Performance agreement. It's a 5-year agreement that would rebate a percentage of the property taxes back to the firm based on the valuation of improvements, and in this case, not including the land. The total $11.4 million project is on 7 acres in the Pinnacle Industrial Center. That's on North Mines Road. It's a 45,000 square foot facility, temperature controlled. Again, it's remaining in Laredo, so those 13 jobs plus the 5 new ones, those 18 jobs are not leaving Laredo. They're staying here. Next slide.
Is there a minimum wage on those? In
Yes,
order to-
that's a great question, Mr. Chairman. Since we've been negotiating with them for several months, they got in before the new 380 guidelines were set. So their living wage is $11.40. So the new jobs that they're creating must have a minimum wage of $11.40.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Julian.
What is the current living wage?
$13.37. So going forward on these new projects, our baseline is $13.37.
So has this agreement already been signed or?
No, this agreement, I'm hoping that the committee approves it or recommends it to go to council. We'll take it to council, and after council, what happens is technically they approve the city manager to enter into this agreement. They're authorizing the city manager to enter into agreement. So we're not at the signing point yet. Did you have another question, Julian?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. Well, I mean, did you have a wage question?
I'm sorry, me?
Yes, because what I had said earlier was that since we had started with them back in October, I think, it was before the new rules were adopted. So we negotiated with them on the 1150 premise, or 1140 premise, not the 1337.
You can continue, Mr. Garcia.
Hmm?
You can continue.
Okay. Next slide is the fiscal and economic impact, kind of broken down. And I'll just take a couple of minutes to go through this, and feel free to ask me questions through this. So this is what the company's going to get back. Based on the $10 million valuation of their improvement by the Webb County Appraisal District. So after they finish their building, the first calendar year that they're able to get a full assessment, our estimation, the company's estimation is that they're going to have a $10 million facility. Okay, so based on that, we're going to rebate 75% of their ad valorem taxes the first year at 75%, and then 50% every year after that through the 5 years. And you can see the totals on the right-hand side of what kind of rebate they're going to get. And at the end of the day, or at the end of the agreement, after those 5 years are finished, we project that they'll get about a $174,000 rebate. My estimation is that, well, let me back up a second. These numbers don't include potential appraisal increases. They don't include inflation numbers, right? Or other factors that might raise or drop the valuation of that building. So it likely, everyone knows here that taxes don't go down and valuations don't go down, they go up. So even if it's a 10% increase on that number, it would be around $190,000 rebate that they'll get back.
And this is only for property, this is not for personal property value, correct?
Right, not personal, that's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up, Myra. This is for their ad valorem real property ad valorem taxes.
So just for record, their personal property value is at $2 million. That's at least as of 2020. And it went the year prior was $1 million.
So the next page, this breaks down, what the city would, direct revenue, it would receive, in ad valorem, taxes, during that 5-year period. Now, remember I said that we weren't giving a tax break on the land, just the improvements, so we're getting the full amount of taxes on the $1.4 million tract of land. So, given those, numbers there, year one, we get the city gets 25%, if you remember, from the improvements, the firm is getting 75% back, so that means the city gets to keep 25%, right? And so then you see the corresponding numbers, the city gets 50% of the ad valorem taxes the next 4 years, and then we get the 100% of the land and taxes, so that together is 40,600 and the years 2 through 5, and then at the end, at the bottom here, we have the city's projected revenue at $187,200. So that's what the revenue would be for the city in ad valorem tax. I keep in mind, it could be a little higher than that because of increases, or tax hikes, or even a decrease. It could be a little bit lower, but that's what we project.
Just as an FYI, it also depends on the appraisals district tax rate or
Right.
square
Right.
footage and how often they do their comparables. So it may not be $10 million, it may be less, which is
Yeah.
FYI.
No, it might be less. I mean, that's correct. That's why I want to couch everything that I'm saying, that this is estimation. Even if you go to WebCAD's, pages and they show you how much businesses pay, they always say this is an estimation and not a sure number. But I think we're in the ballpark here. Next slide. Okay, so the fiscal, again, economic impact, I'm gonna take a little time with these as well. So on the first, on the top little oval or rectangle there, it says total projected ad valorem revenue for the next 5 and 10 years. Again, you just saw the $187,200 for the city. That's ad valorem for 5 years, but over a 10-year period, after the agreement goes away, and you take all 10 years combined, it's $548,000. Maybe about 550 would be the estimate. Again, as Myra said, that could be higher or lower, but that's going to be the ballpark number for 10 years, keeping this company here, just to give you an idea. Total projected city bridge revenue for the next 5 and or 10 years from this project, $228,000 for the first 5 years, 456 for a total of 10 years. And that's based on about 40 trucks a week and 48 weeks out of the year. And so given that sort of conservative estimate, that would be the revenue for the city on those. The total projected payroll for the next 5 and 10 years, again, during the agreement, the total payroll during that time would be $3.1 million. And then for 10 years, it would be about $6.2 million. Some other revenue for the city, as the application fee was $1,500, and then the estimated planning building fee is about $13,000. And there's probably some other little things that are in here that we haven't accounted for, but those are some of the other ones, just to give an example.
So, before we move on, so they've accepted everything that is in the new adopted, with the exception of the salary
No, we negotiated with them under the old,
under the old.
without the new guidelines.
Okay.
But generally, they do fit the new guidelines.
Right.
Yeah, for the most part, their investment's more than $7 million for local business, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't meet the job number, right?
Correct.
But under the old one, we had a little bit more wiggle room to deal with that. So they're not creating many jobs, but their investment is pretty big.
And going back to what we discussed at our last meeting, we have that exception rule, so if they believe that there's a business that is worth incentivizing, they can definitely go and negotiate
Correct.
with them as well.
Correct. Someone on virtual?
Can I speak on that? I might have brought up the salary, and I've been just running some numbers right now. I think the reason it's really important to focus on the living wage versus what we had previously is just on the back of the napkin from using all the numbers. What they would be paying is essentially for an individual is $22,800. What
their employees have benefits, the standard benefits of health, medical, dental, and vision, and also they have paid time off.
Beautiful.
But is there anything in the agreement that requires?
Pardon me, say that again?
Is there anything in the agreement with the city that would require at least health insurance?
Yes, no, previously, we've always required them to have, benefits for their employees, especially health insurance, that's number one. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, the reason I bring concern with this is just by doing the math here, I'm not sure if anyone got a chance to look at the HRNA study, which actually showed rental and housing costs. Based off the rental income alone, an individual in Laredo would at least have to pay $10,656, $10,656 a year, one individual for one unit. Food cost in South Texas is $3,000 a year, and then the cost of owning a vehicle is $6,840, which brings the total of, before taxes, the cost of an individual living in Laredo with just that alone is $20,464. So I think that's why it's important that moving forward, including with this deal, we are talking about job retention, but if we're talking about job retention, is it really a good idea that job retention essentially is putting the individual under the poverty line here in the city of Laredo? It's just with those expenses alone, it leaves $2,400 in savings, and that's assuming that they wouldn't have to pay any taxes. If they have a child or any of those other costs for a spouse they have to take care of, we're essentially incentivizing people to be under the poverty line. That's why the living wage salary is so important when it comes to our city putting together proposals that retain jobs or bring jobs to where we need to make sure we are not setting, if those jobs are the people under the poverty line, I just don't see how that makes sense.
Well, Mr. Ornosky, if you recall, we brought Westpac to you about 2 months ago, and those jobs paid a minimum of 15. So our trend is not to keep these jobs at 11, and I haven't brought to you jobs that come at 11 or below dollars an hour. So we've been already doing that. Master Nardi was when we brought them to the council, they started their lowest wages at $14 an hour, and that was last year. So we're already trending that way. Rest assured that that's what we're doing. In this case, this is a small business. They only have 13 employees, so not every one of them makes $11 an hour. Some of their managers probably make in the 30s and the 50,000s. So that's only a handful of jobs, and keep in mind that this is a baseline minimum for them. That's not to say that they don't pay their employees more than 11. They showed me their payrolls, and I don't want to disclose that here in a public meeting, but there's several jobs that pay $13 and $15 an hour. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Mr. Dominguez.
I just want to make a comment, Julian. In order for them to retain those employees, I think they're going to have to increase their salaries, because I mean, with the missions and the rest of the people, they'll go somewhere else just to get a better pay. So I think it'll be natural that things gonna increase automatically.
I agree.
It's a good point did you bring up, Julian, but rest assured that's what we're doing. Are you good? Are you okay?
I just have to, look, I'm trying to hire people right now too. It's impossible to pay anyone under $14 an hour to get them to come. I agree with that, but I think having at least, we're talking about city funds, and I think with that, and I commend you for bringing, obviously, above $13.37 an hour, that's great work. I'm not discounting any of all that. I'm just specifically talking about this deal and how, I think we've already agreed in the chapter 3 that we're going to be moving to the floor at 13.37.
Yeah, again, let me
I do still think it's.
I just have to reiterate that we started with them before the policy was close to being implemented. So I cannot go back to them and say, hey, by the way, we did negotiate with you in good terms, and I have to change this on you. So I prefer not to do that, but that's my opinion.
I agree. Can we move on to,
Oh, before we move on that slide, there's something else to the right. There's a little square there, or rectangle. It says projected property tax revenue for the next 10 years. I just want to make the committee aware, and the city council, when we do bring this to city council, is that how the other taxing entities benefit from your effort, from our effort, our collective efforts on the city side, and they're not working on economic development, but they're reaping quite a bit from it. So in the next 10 years, UISD, based on today's numbers, would get about $1.36 million in property taxes. Webb County would get $470,000, and Laredo College about $371,000 over a 10-year period. Next slide, and this is my summary. On this, Empacadora, we're retaining a major produce firm in Laredo. We're working on that sector. Mr. Chairman, you and I have had conversations about expanding the offerings from Mexico. So this fits into that mode of the produce sector. This is a total of an $11.4 million project that's at Pinnacle, so it's in the city. They're going to pay city taxes. Again, we can keep working toward that, of bringing those kind of firms to Laredo in the cold storage sector. I'll admit the job numbers are not huge here compared to others that we've already brought in, but we do retain 13 jobs that could have gone away, and we're creating 5 additional jobs. The companies we've worked with since I've been here, they often give us minimal numbers because they don't want to overshoot, and they're going to hire more people than this. And this is not counting seasonal workers either. So in the black, the next two little squares, just want to reiterate that the company would receive about $174,000 in rebates from the city and ad valorem taxes, but direct city revenue would be about $430,000. So we're definitely above, in the black, and in terms of the city's concerned, based on our projections. And then, lastly, I want to mention that, like all the other economic incentive agreements that we do, there's a compliance element to it, and so we will meet with this company on an annual basis to review their payrolls, and then also to, it's like an audit to make sure that they're living up to their bargain, to their part of the bargain.
Declan, just for record,
Yes,
what
ma'am.
does by COL mean?
Oh, City of Laredo.
Just,
Yeah.
just for anybody who's
Yeah,
watching who doesn't know what that
couldn't-
means.
I couldn't fit it in there, so, at this point, I know you've asked questions in between, but I will also take any questions on this. And I apologize for our friends at Empacadora who couldn't be here today. They run a really small shop, they're very busy, and they really tried to get away, but, they just couldn't do it, and I apologize for that. But they'll be back if you tune in for the city council. Hopefully they can make it then. But we believe it's a good project. The city management is aware of it, and certainly now you guys are briefed on it. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Dominguez.
No, I just like to make a comment. I think it's a great move. A move because the majority of their exports go through McAllen, and the majority of the imports come through Laredo.
You're
So I think,
talking about Empacadora?
yeah,
Oh.
this is the same company we're talking about. So hopefully they'll move their exports to Laredo. That's what it sounds like. Hopefully I think that's why I said it's a great move. I think it's a good move. I think you did a great job there.
Well, thank you. On that note, the company did tell me that they run like the HR and all that from Laredo for their McAllen operation. So I asked them, so would you say technically then we're the headquarters for your business? And they said, yeah, we're the headquarters. But they only have those 2 locations. But thank you very much. We'll keep on this and do better, for sure.
Thank you. In regards in discussion, and because it goes hand in hand with your agenda item. Last meeting, we made a motion that was approved 7-0 in order to get your department some help. I watched the city council meeting, and that motion was not brought up to table. Obviously, through council's comments, they see the need for another employee and to bigger staff in your department. So I just want to reiterate that to council, and if you could definitely please bring that up to them whenever you get the chance, that the whole committee voted a 7-0, that they need to expand the economic development
Yes, sir.
department.
Thank you for saying that, number one. Number two, it's in the minutes that we did not give them, so they will get that, and see that. I think the mayor and council member Martinez and others have advocated that point, so I appreciate you saying that. But yeah, hopefully we can do that here in the next year and add a couple of folks. I mean, it really is a blessing to be in Laredo right now in terms of business opportunities, where, and Val can attest to this. Val, we get backed up on a number of opportunities that come, and I can only address so many.
Right.
So some have to fall off the table. We just can't get to them.
And just for the record, Chairperson,
Our motion, we're allowed to show up and actually say that.
Chairperson, I think that part of the personnel, we also discussed infrastructure, technology, more than
Right.
anything, and then other resources that are needed to actually expand the department needs beyond personnel.
Software and humanware.
But we're going through that assessment right now and getting ready for the budget cycle to do that. So, and I do work with Laredo EDC and Laredo Chamber on some of these things, but there's just certain things that they cannot do, like this.
I have a quick question regarding that. Do you guys use a platform for people to submit these chapter 380s or anything that helps streamline, the amount of throughput that goes through your department?
Well, right now, we're uploading the application and the rules that were set by this committee and the city council, and putting that on our websites, right? In order for us to do that, we're also sharing that information with the Laredo EDC so they can do the very same, right? And be attractive that way. But honestly, maybe some other economic development directors do it differently. Maybe it's where we're located, in the state. But a lot of times, these 380s don't start out as a 380s. They just start out as a conversation. And that human contact is really important. It's just like selling whatever your product is. And so you want to do that as best as possible and kind of figure out what people need and what they're looking for. Oftentimes, these programs don't fit what they need, and they move on and they build on their own. But yeah, I try to reserve a lot of the entry-level kind of into these kind of things to one-on-one conversations and hearing these people out first and see if they're going to become clients and building a relationship that way. So I'm going to use technology. I use it now. I use LinkedIn a lot to contact people, to get information from people. But that human element is really important in this, and so I'll continue to receive direction from the council, but also use some of those tried and true methods that are old school to kind of develop this business.
Thank you for your time, Teclo. Thank you for your presentation. Would anyone like to make a motion?
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Chairman. I have a question. I'm trying to learn about this chapter 380. So my
Yes, ma'am.
question would be, is these thing are applied, every city has their local charters or local policies, or it's something that you apply in general? So you
No.
streamline this according to the city, or how does it work?
Yes, ma'am. The state government has provided every city the ability to use these 380s. It's in the Texas State Government Code. You can use in Chapter 380. That's what it's called, a 380 agreement. So every city that adopts a program can use it. And for the counties, it's under Chapter 381. Slightly different, but really the same program. So if city wants to use it, they can. If they choose not to, they can choose not to.
Okay, thank you,
Great question, Elia.
thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we can, that was it. That was my last slide, and
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second, Arturo.
A motion to approve Mr. Teclo's negotiation with Empacadora GAB, seconded by Arturo. Discussion? No discussion. We'll do for the call. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Aye.
but, John, did you vote on this?
Yes, aye, yeah, I'm in favor.
Okay.
None against. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you, committee. I really appreciate your support on this. We'll move forward to the city council, not for Monday's meeting, but hopefully in 3 weeks. We'll get that there. And FYI, the empacadora, pardon me, the other agreement that you approved about a month ago for Westpac, that will be for the council on Monday.
Perfect.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you, and thank you to Empacadora as well. Agenda item 5B, discussion and possible action regarding update from staff regarding the inner city housing incentive plan. Our committee vice chair, Julian Ratnowski, the floor is yours.
So I brought this back up, and obviously, I don't think we're going to get a direct presentation from city staff. What I was mainly looking for is we already voted to approve this about 2 years ago, and it kind of just went flat, and we never heard back. Was there? I know this was voted on before you were here, Declo, but
Okay.
has other staff members given you any insight on what has been going on with what we approved, or if there's been any headway or movement in the direction?
No, there's not been any communication with me on that. That's not to say that community development or the housing department, which has its own, corporation has its own board, are not doing those things, but I have not heard of anything on my end. I will also say that Arnold, who is Lozano, who does a great job for us, is out sick today, and best wishes to him to getting better. But he has been attending the inner city meetings that Mr. Jose Ceballos has created, and he could maybe shed some light on that, but he's not here today. We also have in attendance. You want to come up and introduce yourself? Sorry, this might help a little, Julian.
And I did attend that meeting yesterday. Good afternoon, my name is Gary Pinson. I'm the building official, acting building director. So I'm here to answer any questions, not that I've been here for a long time. I've only been here 3 years for the city, so trying to catch up with all the different boards and stuff. We did have a meeting with the inner city development, and as a matter of fact, this afternoon at 3 p.m., because we're trying to implement the vacant property ordinance, and that's what is in discussion right now and trying to promote to keep all these buildings from being empty. We do have a different ordinance that is a substandards, and we've identified over 100 homes around the city, and we're easily, out of those 100, we have already 40 that have been demolished, 30 of them that have already been complied with by the owner. So it's kind of moving along, and that all just started within the last 2 years. Okay, so I don't know if you have any other direct questions as far as that.
No, so I actually participated in the meeting that you guys had, I think it was on Tuesday regarding, yes, the vacant building, but this, as discussed during that meeting, obviously a lot of those vacant building ordinances kind of include the concept of the carrot and the stick, if you are going to be possibly finding individuals for not being able to upkeep their buildings, usually a lot of cities with those provide some form of incentive policy in order to basically incentivize those individuals to come in and rehab those buildings. I did send, the Housing Authority did hire HRMA, which is a great company that actually helped San Antonio develop their inner city housing incentive policy. And their whole framework that was used to develop the city of San Antonio's housing policy was the same one that was used to basically put together the framework of what the city of Laredo would possibly be able to do. And I think I emailed all of that out again, including the HRNA study. The study pretty much, I'm going to summarize it, but basically concludes that most of the inner city, there is no, it is not financially feasible currently to go and, either rehab these homes or to go and develop new housing or better housing or affordable housing in particular. rates have been dropping very drastically over the past 2 years, and these new additional construction costs that have come into place since COVID, I think are gonna very much slow down the construction of affordable housing, in our city. So I'm unsure if it's the best strategy, especially when as citizens and as the city, we are continuously paying for all the infrastructure laid out throughout the inner city, yet these properties are starting to drop in value due to the fact that people aren't fixing them up or they're letting them get in disarray, and we're not essentially able to generate the tax revenues due to those falling values to sustain these neighborhoods. So the reason I brought this item up again is because most cities that have gone into their inner city or in their downtown and brought those areas back did so through an incentive policy. Houston, San Antonio, and I think we keep talking about how the downtown is it's trying to come back, but it's moving it at a snail's pace, and I think it's going to further be slowed down due to the recent increase in costs for development. We really need to move forward and develop, finally get this policy at the forefront of trying to bring back not just multi-family housing, but making sure that if those type of developments would be incentivized, that they are affordable. Because at the end of the day, you can build anything as long as someone's willing to pay for it. The project would then become feasible. But if we keep looking at our city's numbers and the incomes that are brought in, we don't have luxury housing market pretty much, especially in the inner city. So we do need to make sure that we reactivate these blighted areas. And this is, to me, the tried and true method that every other city has taken. So what I like to motion is that we bring back the inner city housing incentive policy that was already approved, but to have city staff and that be either the economic development department, which is extremely short staffed, so I'm not expecting that much opportunity there, but possibly tying the building department and the planning department on looking into this HRNA study that was developed, the housing authority has it, and updating what that incentive policy should truly look like in order to bring affordable housing into the inner city. That's fine.
No, that's, okay, if you can hold that for your thought 1 second, Julian. Mr. Chairman, and I don't know if this fits Mr. Rodnowski's bill, but we do have, an empowerment zone, and maybe Jerry can speak to that does what Mr. Rodnowski's talking about.
And specifically for District 8, which includes the inner city, they pretty much have taken advantage of this NEZ program, which is the tax abatement freezes the taxes for 5 years or 10 years, depending on the investment. And so pretty much out of 132, 33 of them were specifically for downtown. So that program is working, still available. We do offer it, even if they don't ask for it, we actually offer it to them so that they can come in and take advantage of it. So that's already an abatement program.
And which one is better? The one Julian is talking about or the one you're talking about?
Oh, which one's?
Better. Which one has
I'm
more?
not familiar with the one that Julian's talking about.
Oh.
Because
If I can address what he's referring to, he's 100% correct. Now, the reason in my motion, I am looping back the HRNA study and looking into that is it actually acknowledges the NEZ program and states, even with that, that is not enough. So I don't think it's going to be beneficial to try to hash out all those things right now over this meeting, but I do think that this HRNA study needs to be looked at because we're not talking about feelings right now. There was a study that was done that took into account the cost of construction and took into account every single policy that exists currently within the city that would be considered an incentive, and came to the conclusion that we are far from what would need to be available. And I think proof is when you look around, that NEC has been around for a while, and individuals have taken advantage of it, which is great, but that doesn't mean that it is enough. And that's what this study is alluding, well, not alluding to, is directly stating. If anyone has it open on their page, I can go to page 26 and 27 of the study and show it. But I do think we need to have a more comprehensive conversation on that. And that's what's essentially included in my motion, which is to take that into consideration and updating what we initially approved back in 2018.
There's a motion by Mr. Rodnowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dominguez. Discussion? Julian, would you, go ahead, Tecla.
Well, I'm just gonna read off some of the stats for the NEZ program, just for the committee's, knowledge. And so far this year, 16, there's been 16 NEZs that have been issued, right, for projects.
Which is twice as much that we did 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, it was only 17. Then we doubled that up to about 29, and this year, we're already at 16.
Yeah, so last year there was 29 NEZ, mainly downtown, right?
No, these are.
Citywide, and then $54 million, over the life of the program, the last 7 years.
Investment.
I would also say that, I will help, whatever the committee's directing me to do.
Thank you.
However, there's, departments and or committees that focus on this particular issue that Mr. Radnowski brings up, probably way more than I would, and I don't really possess that expertise. But I'm just bringing that up, but I'll still take direction whenever y'all tell me.
And I agree with you, Becklo, and that's why we need to include the planning and building department in all of this. This is more of a joint effort.
That's exactly what I was gonna go at, Julian. How do you plan to coordinate this, and see who was in charge of the inner city housing incentive policy? Because there's a million projects that get passed through council, so they got on the next task and the next task. So in order to see where it was, where it kind of got placed to the side.
I'm sorry, the question is who would take on this?
Yeah.
I think if anything, just like, what, was mentioned right now with the vacant building ordinance, I think we need to work with staff on putting together a group. But I can tell you right now, there are a lot of individuals, including the housing authority, which is trying to get this done. I think at the end of the day, though, the city has to step up to the plate if they'd like to see these. We always talk about, and I've seen it in council that we're trying to bring back the downtown. We're trying to bring back the inner city. We're trying to beautify these areas. In order to do that, the city needs to come in and, with the housing authority, with EDAP, it can be included in that vacant building ordinance, also creating a group to work on putting together that policy. But there are plenty of people that are ready and willing and able to come to the table on finally pushing a policy like this through.
Julian, I think, this has nothing to do with what you're asking, on the content of your proposal. I'm looking at it from a structural point of view. There's a lot of asks in what you're asking to get done, and looping in all kind of departments and resources. And so maybe you can huddle with the chairman to figure out how to best move that request forward. I mean, I can move it through economic development and we can put it in the minutes and also put it in an item in a Friday report, but obviously what's happened last time, you probably don't want to see that happen again. So I'm not sure what the best course of action would be for you to see the results that you're asking for, but it might take more than just a committee voting, which we can do, that's no problem. But it'll take more than this committee.
I think you're very right, Becklo. I think it's gonna take a lot more than that. But I do think, and this is a big project that would need
move for the call. All those in favor?
I'd like to amend the motion to,
Go ahead.
to put, Julian as representing our committee, our advisory committee to look at something better or to do that policy.
I second.
You accept that amendment?
I'll accept that amendment.
Okay, cool. I think that's already what he does as vice chair, but that's fine.
But on our behalf, on behalf of the economic development,
All those in favor?
I,
Any against?
Julian, just work with your council member on how to move that forward.
Right.
Because I'm not sure exactly how that's gonna happen, but that would probably be your best route, in my opinion.
I think we're gonna have to work with a lot of individuals to move this forward. I agree with you, Declan.
Okay,
And once you're ready, I mean, obviously, we communicate with each other all the time. But definitely reach out to me and I'd love to lend a helping hand to help you coordinate this as well.
Thank
We'll
you.
move on with the agenda, report, 6A, which is a briefing on City of Laredo Advisory Board Rules and Regulations by Mr. Teclo Garcia.
Mr. Chairman, just from my comments earlier, I'd like to table that so I can bring you back more information at the next meeting,
Okay,
next in-person meeting.
I'm fine with that. I'll move to table that. Is there a second? Second discussion. Do you have anything that you'd like to brief us in immediately?
Yeah, I can reiterate what I said earlier.
Like just a little important key points that you already have down?
The main thing is in-person meetings from here forward, there's no exceptions.
Okay.
Also, you have 4 absences per term year, so if you were named in February, that next 12 months is your term year, so that you have 4 absences allowed within that term, right? So going forward, that's what we're gonna use. Yeah, and so there's no, right, and according to the city council and our city attorneys, there's no asking for leeway. You automatically get put out, and it also disqualifies you from serving on any other committees if you can't meet your obligations to that first committee, right?
Mr.
Well,
Garcia, would you be able to send, I guess, an attendance report so everyone knows where they're at?
I mean,
Do we have that?
if that's what the chairman of the committee wants, we can do that.
Yeah, we can do that, but I believe we're starting off fresh as of right now. Is that correct, or is?
Well, you're
And,
the records are being kept from the term year, right, from when you were,
From when you were appointed, yes.
yes,
But the rules are changing halfway through some people's terms,
right.
years, okay.
I'm willing,
Times through our term or through the year?
through your term year, so if you were named in May, you go from May to May, and within those 12 months, you have the 4 absences.
Is there any way to
12-month cycle.
No,
No excuses at all,
No
so,
excuses.
okay.
they don't accumulate it.
we typically meet, Elia, on the first Thursday of the month, so we can plan on that. There are sometimes a special meeting.
Okay,
If you miss a special meeting, those don't count against you,
good.
right? Okay, but the regular meetings do. So we'll do it and then we try to post the agenda the Friday previous to the Thursday meeting to try to get ahead of things.
Sometimes it gets a little complicated and crazy, and they'll post on a Monday, but, yeah.
Monday.
Sorry, my bad, yeah, earlier.
Depending on holidays, yes.
But yes, those are, essentially, that's really what you need to know. There's some ethical, things as well that I can brief you on that were talked about. But for the most part, the attendance and in person. Pardon me? Yeah,
Yes, they'll have to be in person.
yeah, they have to be
Yeah.
in person, yes, correct.
You could do it virtual.
But it won't be counted as.
It won't count, oh,
It
okay.
won't come.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Okay.
We'll wait for a full briefing on the next meeting. Move, for the call in order to table this item. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any against? None against, motion carries unanimously. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion to adjourn.
By Arturo, second by Mayra. Discussion? No discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any against? None against, motion
Thank
carries
you, everyone.
unanimously. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you to the tech, especially for helping us out, Mr. Pinzon for being out here, and everybody who made it possible for us to be virtual and in presence right now. I know you was super last minute, but you guys definitely pulled through and made it work. So thank you guys. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Thank you, Val.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman, thank you for acknowledging that. Want to welcome Elia to her first meeting.
Official meeting, yes.
Official
Yeah,
meeting.
thank you.
Welcome.
Merci.
They usually go about like this.
Uh-huh. No, it's
Sometimes
ve-
longer,
ve-
but,
no, it was very dynamic, very diverse, and I'm happy to be here.
We're glad to have
Thank
your
you.
experience and your point of view on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Y'all have a great day.
Appreciate it.